Hello everyone and welcome to Blog Runner Everything and welcome back to the channel. And it's only been like 5 days, 6 days tops since the last upload, and man, unfortunately we've got just about as much to talk about this time as we had last time. Okay, but the difference now is that we don't really have a World Cup a World Cup final full of Barcelona players who've just won it to deflect and take away from the fact that there is still a lot of quiet on the business front in as far as Barcelona is concerned, with transfers. And it's probably not being helped by the fact that once again, during this quiet time that Barcelona is having, doing God knows what, Real Madrid is just absolutely going bananas, going bonkers, going crazy. Bubugaga. They're just doing the most, okay? Right now, we're hearing that, they're lining up Rodri, just left with negotiating with Man City, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, they're also looking at Yan Diomande. They already had a 90 plus 10 million euros bid rejected by Leipzig. I mean, full credit to Leipzig. They really know how to hold their ground. They've been consistent with the price that they want for Diomande. The reason he's not already at PSG is because PSG felt like they didn't want to pay upwards of 100 million euros on him. And look, it's looking like whoever's going to get him, that's how much they're going to have to pay. All right. And well, I guess the most joy we're going to have as Barca fans right now is looking at some random clips like Diomande after an El Clasico saying that, there was a dive by Real Madrid before Mbappe's free kick was scored and that their penalty was not, in fact, a penalty. So, that's basically all. But what we're going to do instead is we will look at some of what's happening with Barca players. Maybe you might consider it part of the fallout from the World Cup. And one player in particular he's had it kind of rough, if we're to be honest. It's Frenkie De Jong, because we've seen quite a lot of news regarding him, regarding the injury that he had, and even some big Barcelona accounts, YouTube-wise, Twitter-wise, whatever-wise, they've kind of, laid into him quite a bit because of the fact that, by now we're finding out during the World Cup, he played with an injury, and that injury has now caused him to miss the first 6 or so months of the season for Barcelona with his recovery. And on top of that, of course, is just some of the stuff we've been hearing, like, Frenkie refusing to play against Atleti and not really playing so much for Barca towards the end of the season because he didn't want his injury to get worse, and this and that. And, well, he has actually come out and he's responded to everything, hasn't exactly addressed all of the issues I've brought up, like, not playing against Atleti, not playing the rest of the season, all that stuff. But here is what he did say, okay? And I quote, "Dear fans, normally I don't pay much attention to what is being written about me, the team, or the club. But recently, there has been a lot of speculation about my injury and my situation at Barca. It's difficult for me to see people questioning my relationship and commitment to the club because of false reports. Football is everything to me, and I've always given everything I have for FC Barcelona and my country. That is why I want to share what happened. During the World Cup, I got injured on my knee. After the first assessments, the doctors told me it was a small injury and that it wouldn't get worse if I continued playing. The only challenge was playing with some pain, but throughout my career, I have done that whenever I could contribute to the team, both for my club and for my country. In my holiday, I returned to FC Barcelona for further examinations. These showed that the injury was more serious than initially determined. Thankfully, at this stage, there is no need for surgery, and I am now fully focused on my recovery and returning to the pitch as soon as possible. Every day I work to be in the best possible shape. I take my profession, my body, and my responsibility to the team extremely seriously, but sometimes there are things you cannot control, and this injury is one of them. Playing for Barca and Orange is something I feel incredibly proud of, and my commitment to both will never change. I will continue to give everything for this badge, for my teammates, for our fans. There are still many moments to create and goals we want to achieve together. Thank you for your support. I can't wait to be back. Fisco Barca, sempre, Frenkie. So, what do I think about that? Well, I think, first of all, like I said, didn't really address some of those issues coming up, like, him refusing to play against Atleti and whatnot, which for me, I feel like those are bigger issues to address. I mean, playing with an injury at a World Cup is not something I'll ever criticize a player for, to be quite honest with you. How many players in that situation wouldn't do what he did? In fact, I'm fairly certain Lamine Yamal was probably doing this the entire tournament, right? Who knows? We'll find out maybe by the time that, we're in the thick of the season, then somebody will eventually leak a story or something. But, on my part, I don't really fault him so much for that, especially since, like, he claims there was a misdiagnosis from a doctor. So it's more a case of it was, something maybe he would have already done. Like he said he has done it before already for both Barca and for the Netherlands. And this time around, the misdiagnosis probably is what made the situation worse. And obviously for Barca, it's not a good situation to be in, considering how much money we're paying him salary-wise. And we all know that little trick Barca likes to do at this point, where if a player is injured, they take your salary mass, give it to somebody else, and then you come back to be a headache by the time of the next registration. So I don't think Barca should play around with Frenkie's salary mass, just because I think they already kind of have two guys who can step in. We've seen already that Marc Casado can step in. He showed us in, the 24-25 season. And this time around now, we're going to come into the season with, a fully fit Bernal again. And he's somebody who, like we saw as well in 24-25, could step into that role. So either one of the two next to Pedri, I think, solves Barcelona's problem for now, which is to say that personally, I don't think Barcelona's Frenkie problem is that big of a problem at all. Which is why it's funny when you see certain stories now starting to pop up where, people are claiming that Barca is interested in signing Rodri. And look, personally, I think it's BS. Of course, they're adding this little, the little context of, well, after FDJ's injury, after Frankie's injury, Barcelona got in touch with Rodri's camp, and I think that's just a waste of, don't pay attention to any of that. Okay, Rodri is locked into Real Madrid. We've heard how he's been begging for Real Madrid. I mean, it's funny that Real Madrid actually signed Silva before him. I guess maybe because, other teams like Atleti were interested in Bernardo as well. Who knows? But yeah, like I said, for me, the Barca Frenkie situation, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as it might seem in terms of, the sporting side of things. Of course, financially it is, but sporting wise, they do have enough bodies that can cover that spot. And they do not need Rodri, I think, in that role. Would Rodri be a good add? Of course he would. Any team right now could probably do with a Rodri in it. But I don't think that's going to happen for Barcelona. Okay? It's not happening. But something that did happen is that Barca played their first friendly of the season. I think they played against a team called, is it UD or AD Europa? Let me just, confirm that in a bit. Ignore the new drip with the new third kit and all that stuff. But it was a match that Barcelona CE, there you go. It was neither AD or UD. CE Europa. That's who Barcelona played in a closed doors training match last evening. I guess closed door friendly, you could think. And well, they won. And the goals on the night were scored by Ibrahim Tiara, Ebrema Tunkara. We saw Hector Fort get in on the goals as well. And there's one more player who, I don't know why his name keeps slipping. There we go, Alex Gonzalez, who I honestly saw for the first time in my life. I'll try to see if I can find those those highlights of the match once again. And I don't know, I guess we'll do some we'll leave dangerously a bit, see if it's something that YouTube is going to be happy with if we upload that. But either way, I felt like, pretty decent performance, I guess. I mean, I don't even know where CE Europe are from. So there is that. All right. But, it's crazy. Like the entire time I was watching that match, by the way, I was seeing Hector Fort and I kept seeing Xavi Espart. I don't know if that makes sense for you. But anyway, that's Barcelona's first match of their preseason, I guess. Obviously, the next matches are going to have some of the players that we are, more familiar with. You're going to have some of your Eric Garcias, some of your Marc Bernaus, and at this moment in time, the only thing I'm waiting to see actually is what is going to happen with a certain Rooney Bardaj, because he's still with the Barcelona team. We know that he has asked for some, for a move, but that's not yet happened. So we'll wait to see what happens on that front. And I guess if we also think about what could be going on transfer-wise for Barca, still, defensively, they are looking at some options. The first one, of course, being, surprise, with Barcelona, Aymeric Laporte, who was, Kubarsi's partner in the World Cup. And he worked well with Kubarsi. So, Barca now want to sign him, which is like, okay, that's fine. I understand the logic. Question is, will he actually work in Hansi Flick's system? Because I don't know if I'm mistaken, but for me, I think Laporte is not much faster than Pau Kubarsi. So, is he going to help out that much more when we know that you kind of need a speedy center back? It's a shame that all those Lukeba links and whatnot are going to come to absolutely nothing for Barca, because, of course, we heard they'll not be able to sign him unless they move a player like Araujo. And, well, right now the challenge you're having is that those players don't want to leave. What we do know, though, about Aymeric Laporte is that he allegedly has a low release clause, which is around 15 million euros, and his wages, his demands for wages aren't likely to be very high because of, he's an old dude. He's like 31 or 32, I think, maybe even 30. I don't know. You might have to I guess I'll just flash his bio on the screen or something. I've forgotten how old the dude is. So financially, he is a feasible option. The only challenge right now is that Athletic Club are denying that there is any such thing like a 15 million euro release clause, and that they want something like 20 or 30 million euros for him. So, they're not going to make things easy once again, because they don't like doing business with us. They don't want to do business with us. I guess since we took Inigo and we almost took Nico, all that stuff. Aside from that, there's also some interest in Christian Romero, which for this point in time hasn't really come up to anything. Or being told is, Barca are watching Romero or scouting Romero, which, like I said, we've been hearing that since the start of July. So, I really wouldn't think there's anything that's going to come from that. And like I mentioned again earlier, generally speaking, don't expect any news about signing a center back until we manage to get one off of the books. And we have, of course, even to that extent, been told that just because Christensen has renewed, it's not a guarantee that he might stay. So, maybe he could be one of those center backs that's moved so somebody else can come in. Right. Then, of course, we come to the story of the summer for Barca. Julian Alvarez. Will he or will he not? Well, right now it's looking a lot like he will not. Why? Atletico Madrid remain firm that they will not sell to Barcelona. They don't want to strengthen a rival, and also that they're unhappy with Barcelona's behavior. But they also feel like Arsenal is the only club that they're open to selling Alvarez to. And that's probably because PSG has, I guess, walked away, looking at the fact that Alvarez is saying he only wants Barca. Barca, of course, is still interested and they're trying to more or less see how they can work things out. But, we did hear earlier from Laporte, a couple weeks ago, he said that the deadline on the offer Barca has on the table currently is the 31st of July, beyond which they'll look at Plan B options. And we do know that those Plan B evaluations have been done, and the club has identified those, Plan Bs. Deco has the files, on his desk, like the Epstein files were on Pam Bondi's desk. Yeah, Deco has those files on his desks, but Barca is yet to fully give up on Julian Alvarez. I guess because they don't want him to think like they didn't try or they didn't really want him. And finally, there's of course the issue to do with Joao Cancelo. With him, there's still some negotiations going on, and as of the past couple of days, again, it's just the issue of Barca and Al Hilal coming to an agreement on a price. Al Hilal, of course, sensing that they could make a quick buck here, and they're trying to do that. But obviously, if you're Barcelona, you're not really trying to spend more than you need to on a 33-year-old fullback option who has only got maybe 2-3 more top seasons left in him. So that's probably going to take a while to be finalized, but there is still a permanent deal being looked at because Barca are interested in him and they want to do this. Then there is, of course, the issue of a certain Ferran Torres, who, look, full credit to the guy, he scored the winning goal in a World Cup final, but I then feel like him doing that has given him the confidence to say things that are a bit absurd. Okay, this man is saying he didn't really get chances at Barcelona, that Flick didn't really trust him enough. This is a guy who started 2/3 of our matches in the league last season. He had Lewandowski on the bench for 2/3 of our matches, and guess what? A huge chunk of that time he was actually going through the craziest goal route you'll ever see. But here he is now, piping up like that, and they say, okay, it's fine, Ferran. If you want to leave, that's okay. We do know Barca said they can't really offer him much of a renewal until maybe September. Not sure why. Probably has to do some FFP stuff. But that's the situation with him. We do know he's agreed a contract, contractual terms, to put it that way, with PSG. So personally, I'm thinking maybe this is going to be his, this year is going to be his last at Barcelona because, he'll be leaving. So that's what I think. I don't know. We'll see how all of that shakes out. We'll see how it pans out. But, besides all that, if you have, some thoughts, you let me know in the comments what you think. The Frenkie situation, the Ferran situation, the Cancelo situation, the Alvarez saga, as we would have it, which is really not going anywhere. It feels like those episode of Dragon Ball Z where the guy is just charging up for almost the whole episode. It's Goku just trying to charge up and trying to get to Super Saiyan 2 and nothing really happening. Or trying to get to Super Saiyan 1. My bad. Anywho, aside from that, we should probably just say welcome to Karim Adeyemi. He's finally been unveiled. We saw him in training, and we're looking forward to seeing him on the pitch. Him and Gordon and Rafinha and Jamal. Maybe that could be our front four. If we don't keep Ferran, we don't have Lewandowski. Just use Gordon as your number 9. Have Rafinha bombing down the left or Adeyemi. Take your pick, That could be a thing. Anywho, aside from all that, I thank you all for tuning in. Do have a great day and Forza Barca.